Bullied teen stands up for a homeless man, shocked to learn he's a billionaire in disguise. The words echoed in Noah Parker's mind as he trudged home from school. Another day of torment etched into his hunched shoulders. 16 years old with a mop of unruly brown hair and clothes that never quite fit right, Noah had long ago mastered the art of making himself invisible. Or at least, he tried to. Some days like today, invisibility remained frustratingly out of reach. The October wind bit through his thin jacket, but the chill outside was nothing compared to the cold knot of loneliness that had taken permanent residence in his chest. 3 years at Westlake High, and still no place to belong. 3 years of Cameron Wright and his followers making sure Noah remembered exactly where he stood in the social hierarchy, at the very bottom, beneath even the forgotten gum stuck to the cafeteria tables. Worthless. Cameron had sneered earlier that day, shoving Noah against the lockers hard enough to leave bruises blooming across his back. Can't even afford decent clothes. Noah's fingers curled into his palms, short nails digging half moons into soft skin. The worst part wasn't the physical pain. It was how the words wormed their way inside, taking root somewhere deep where he couldn't quite reach to pull them out. His neighborhood came into view. Rows of aging apartment buildings with peeling paint and sagging porches. Not exactly the gleaming suburbs where kids like Cameron lived. Since Dad had left 3 years ago, Mom had been working double shifts at the hospital. They managed, but just barely. Noah paused at Jefferson Park, a small, neglected square of green between apartment blocks. The playground equipment was rusted, the single bench occupied by a man bundled in layers of mismatched clothes, a woolen cap pulled low over his face. The local homeless man everyone called Old Ben. Nobody knew his real name, or if they did, they didn't use it. He was just part of the neighborhood landscape, like the broken street light on the corner or the mural of fading birds on the community center wall. Something about the solitary figure made Noah slow his steps. Maybe it was recognition. One invisible person seeing another. He'd noticed Old Ben more frequently lately, sometimes talking to himself, sometimes just sitting, watching the world with eyes that seemed to hold stories nobody had bothered to hear. The man's weathered face lifted as Noah approached. There was something unexpectedly alert in those blue eyes, something that didn't quite match the tangled gray beard and dirt-smudged cheeks. "Rough day?" the man asked, his voice surprisingly clear and deep. Noah hesitated. His mother had always taught him to be kind to everyone, but she'd also warned him about talking to strangers. Still, there was something about the man's direct gaze that didn't feel threatening, just perceptive. "You could say that," Noah muttered, adjusting his backpack strap where it cut into his shoulder. The man nodded slowly. "The world can be cruel to those it doesn't understand." He patted the space beside him. Sometimes it helps to sit for a moment. Against his better judgment, Noah sat. The bench was cold beneath him, but somehow sitting next to this stranger felt easier than going home to an empty apartment, where the silence would only amplify the echo of Cameron's taunts. "I'm Ben," the man said simply. "Noah." They sat in unexpectedly comfortable silence, watching a pair of squirrels chase each other around a nearby oak tree. Ben pulled out half a sandwich from one of his many pockets and methodically began to eat. "Want some?" he offered, extending the other half toward Noah. "No thanks. I'm good." Noah eyed the slightly squashed sandwich with trepidation. Ben chuckled, a sound like rusty hinges finding their movement again. "Don't worry. It's from the church donation table. Sister Margaret makes them fresh every morning." Noah's stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, betraying him. Heat rushed to his face. "Go on?" Ben insisted. "I've had plenty." Something in the man's dignity made it impossible to refuse without insulting him. Noah accepted the half sandwich and took a small bite. "Peanut butter and raspberry jam. Simple but surprisingly good." "Thank you," he said quietly. "Kindness costs nothing," Ben replied with a slight shrug. "But its absence costs everything." They finished their impromptu meal as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the park. When Noah finally stood to leave, he felt oddly lighter. "Same time tomorrow?" Ben asked as casually as if they were old friends scheduling a regular meeting. Noah hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe." As he walked the remaining blocks home, Noah realized it was the first conversation he'd had all day where he hadn't felt judged or dismissed. There was something almost peaceful about talking with Ben, as if the man's complete removal from the social hierarchy of high school made him safe in a way no one else was. That night, lying in bed, Noah found himself thinking about the strange encounter. About Ben's eyes, clear and intelligent despite his circumstances. About the simple generosity of sharing what little he had. Sleep came easier than it had in weeks. And the next day at school was worse, much worse. Noah's homework, a history paper he'd spent hours perfecting, disappeared from his locker. It reappeared during lunch, floating in pieces in the cafeteria toilet. Cameron and his friends didn't even bother hiding their laughter as Noah stood frozen in the bathroom doorway, staring at the soggy remnants of his work. Oops, Cameron smirked, his Letterman jacket stretched across broad shoulders that had never known the weight of inadequacy. Looks like your paper got a little wet, Parker. Maybe you should take better care of your stuff. Something hot and unfamiliar surged through Noah's chest. Not the usual resigned humiliation, but something sharper, anger, pure and clarifying. You're pathetic, Noah heard himself say, the words escaping before he could trap them behind his teeth. The hallway went silent. Cameron's smug expression faltered for just a second before hardening into something dangerous. What did you just say to me, freak? Noah's heart hammered against his ribs. Part of him screamed to back down, apologize, disappear. But another part, a newer, stranger part, refused to bend. I said you're pathetic, Noah repeated, his voice steadier than he felt. Destroying someone's homework doesn't make you powerful. It just makes you sad. Cameron moved with the speed of a predator, grabbing Noah by the collar and slamming him against the wall. The back of Noah's head hit the tile with enough force to make his vision blur at the edges. You think you can talk to me like that? Cameron hissed, his face inches from Noah's. You're nothing. Your mom cleans bedpans for a living. Your dad couldn't even stand to stick around. The words were designed to cut, to find the softest, most vulnerable places. And they did. But this time, the pain came with something else. A sudden, fierce certainty that Cameron Wright, for all his social power and physical strength, was deeply, fundamentally small. Noah didn't fight back physically. He couldn't have won that battle. But he held Cameron's gaze, refusing to look away, refusing to crumble. Something in that steady gaze must have unsettled Cameron, because after a long, tense moment, he released Noah with a disgusted shove. Not worth my time, he muttered, stepping back. Come on, guys. As Cameron stalked away, followed by his faithful entourage, whispers rippled through the gathered crowd. Noah stood alone, trembling slightly, his back pressed against the wall for support. He made it through the rest of the day in a daze, half expecting further retaliation that never came. By the time the final bell rang, exhaustion had settled into his bones. He walked home on autopilot, his mind replaying the confrontation on endless loop. Without consciously deciding to, Noah found himself entering Jefferson Park. And there on the same bench as yesterday sat Ben, as if he'd been waiting. The old man looked up, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Returned after all, Noah dropped onto the bench, suddenly too tired to stand. Yeah, Ben studied him for a long moment. Something happened. It wasn't a question, but Noah answered anyway. I stood up to someone. A bully. The words sounded strange in his own ears, like someone else's story he was recounting. Ah, Ben nodded slowly. And how did that feel? Noah considered the question. Terrifying, he admitted, but also, right, courage isn't about not being afraid, Ben said quietly. It's about being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. They sat in companionable silence as the afternoon light filtered through the trees, painting dappled patterns on the cracked concrete path. Noah noticed Ben had a book tucked inside his coat, a worn paperback with a creased spine. You like to read? Noah asked, gesturing toward the book. Ben's weathered face softened. Books are the one luxury that's never failed me. Words don't care if you're rich or poor, clean or dirty. They offer themselves equally to anyone willing to listen. He pulled out the book, To Kill a Mockingbird. Its pages dog-eared and yellowed. My favorite, Ben said, his tone almost reverent. 6th time reading it. Noah had been assigned the book in English class last semester. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it costs you. Ben's eyes sharpened with interest. Yes, exactly that. For the next hour, they talked about the book, about Atticus Finch's quiet courage, about Scout's evolving understanding of her world, about the mockingbird's symbolism. Ben spoke with surprising eloquence, his insight so thoughtful that Noah found himself rethinking his own interpretation of the novel. You know a lot about literature, Noah observed as the conversation finally wound down. Ben shrugged, tucking the book back into his coat. I've had time to read. As Noah finally stood to leave, promising to return the next day, he realized something had shifted. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he'd spent an entire hour without thinking about Cameron Wright or his own inadequacies. Instead, he'd been fully present, engaged in a conversation that challenged and stimulated his mind. It felt like finding an unexpected room in a house he'd lived in all his life. No wonder the days fell into a pattern. School remained a gauntlet, but something had changed since Noah's confrontation with Cameron. The bully still tormented him, but now there was a wariness in his approach, as if Noah had become an unpredictable element in a game whose rules he'd previously controlled. And every afternoon, Noah would stop at Jefferson Park, where Ben waited. They talked about books, about history, about the neighborhood. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the world go by. Noah found himself looking forward to these meetings with an intensity that surprised him. One particularly cold afternoon, Noah arrived at the park to find Ben huddled on the bench, shivering visibly despite his layers of clothing. A harsh November wind cut through the trees, carrying the promise of snow. "You should go to the shelter," Noah said, concerned by the blue tinge to the older man's lips. "It's too cold to be out here." Ben shook his head stubbornly. "Shelters have too many rules. Too many people." He coughed, a rough, wet sound that seemed to come from deep in his chest. Noah frowned. The temperature was dropping rapidly as the afternoon waned. The thought of Ben spending the night outside in these conditions made his stomach twist with worry. "Wait here," he said, making a sudden decision. "I'll be right back." Noah ran the 3 blocks to his apartment building, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Inside their small unit, he grabbed his father's old winter coat from the back of his closet, a heavy wool pea coat that his mother had kept, perhaps hoping Dad would return to claim it someday. Noah had outgrown that particular hope long ago. When he returned to the park, breathless from running, Ben was exactly where he'd left him, hunched against the cold. "Here." Noah thrust the coat toward the older man. "Take this." Ben looked up, surprise evident in his rheumy eyes. "I can't take your coat, son." "It's not mine," Noah explained. "It was my dad's. He left it behind when he left us. It's just sitting in our closet anyway." Ben hesitated, his gaze moving from the coat to Noah's face, searching for something. "Your father left?" Noah nodded, the familiar ache dulling with each passing year. 3 years ago. Decided he wanted a different life, I guess. One without us in it. Ben's expression shifted, something like grief passing over his features. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," Noah said automatically, the response worn smooth by repetition. "We manage." "I'm sure you do," Ben replied softly. "But that doesn't make it okay." The simple acknowledgement that what had happened wasn't okay, that Noah's pain was valid, loosened something tight in his chest. "Take the coat," Noah insisted again. "Please." This time Ben accepted it, slipping off his outer layer of tattered jackets to pull on the peacoat. It fit him well, transforming his appearance in subtle ways. With his beard trimmed and his face clean, Noah thought, Ben might have looked like a professor or a business executive. "Thank you," Ben said, his voice rough with emotion. "This is a kindness I won't forget." "It's nothing." Noah shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude for what seemed so small a gesture. "No." Ben's eyes held his with unexpected intensity. "It's not nothing. Never think that." That night, Noah told his mother about his new friend. She listened with a mixture of concern and pride. "You have a good heart, Noah," she said, smoothing his hair back from his forehead the way she used to when he was younger. "Just like your grandfather. He always saw the person behind the circumstances." "Ben's smart, Mom," Noah tried to explain. "Like really smart. He knows all this stuff about literature and history. I don't understand why he's homeless." His mother's tired face softened. "Life isn't always fair, honey. Sometimes brilliant people end up in terrible situations because of mental illness, or addiction, or just plain bad luck." "He doesn't seem crazy," Noah protested. "And I don't think he's on drugs." "There are many roads to homelessness," she replied gently. "Just be careful, okay? Your friendship might mean a lot to him, but don't put yourself at risk." Noah nodded, but in his heart, he knew Ben would never harm him. There was something fundamentally decent about the man, despite his rough circumstances, or perhaps because of them. The following Monday, Cameron Wright was waiting by Noah's locker, not with his usual entourage, but alone, which somehow made him more intimidating, not less. "Parker," he acknowledged, his voice neutral. Noah tensed, prepared for some new humiliation. "What do you want?" Cameron shifted uncomfortably. "I saw you on Saturday." Noah frowned, confused. "So?" "At the park. With that homeless guy." Cameron's expression was unreadable. "You gave him a coat." Heat rushed to Noah's face. The idea of Cameron witnessing that private moment made him feel exposed, vulnerable. "What's it to you?" he asked defensively. Cameron shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. "Nothing. Just, my mom does charity work with the homeless shelter. She's always talking about how they need volunteers." Noah waited for the punchline, for the cruel twist that would turn this seemingly normal conversation into another weapon against him. But Cameron just stood there, hands shoved deep in his pockets, looking anywhere but directly at Noah. "Anyway," Cameron finally continued, "it was decent. What you did?" He turned abruptly and walked away, leaving Noah staring after him in bewilderment. Throughout the day, Noah kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Cameron to use what he'd seen as ammunition for some elaborate new torment. But Cameron barely looked at him, and when he did, there was none of the usual contempt in his expression. By the time Noah reached Jefferson Park that afternoon, his mind was still spinning with confusion. He found Ben feeding pigeons, looking healthier and more robust in the pea coat. "Something's troubling you," Ben observed as Noah dropped onto the bench beside him. Noah explained the strange encounter with Cameron, still puzzled by the bully's uncharacteristic behavior. Ben listened thoughtfully, scattering the last of his breadcrumbs for the gathering birds. "Sometimes people surprise us," he said, "especially when we give them the opportunity to see things differently." "What? What do you mean?" "This boy, he saw you perform an act of kindness. Real kindness, with no audience, no reward. It challenged his perception of you." Ben brushed crumbs from his hands. "And perhaps his perception of himself." Noah considered this. "You think he feels bad about bullying me?" "I think he may be questioning the story he's been telling himself about who you are," Ben replied. "And that's the beginning of seeing you as fully human." The pigeons cooed and strutted at their feet, pecking at invisible morsels. Noah watched them, thinking about Cameron's uncomfortable stance, the way he'd mentioned his mother's volunteer work, as if offering a small, tentative bridge between their worlds. "Do you think people can change?" Noah asked suddenly. Ben's eyes crinkled at the corners, the first genuine smile Noah had seen from him. "I'm counting on it." The next few weeks brought subtle shifts to Noah's life, small changes that accumulated like snowflakes, gradually transforming his landscape. Cameron stopped bullying him. They weren't friends, nowhere close, but the active torment ceased, replaced by a neutral coexistence that felt like breathing room after years of suffocation. Noah's daily visits with Ben continued. They moved from the park bench to a small coffee shop when the weather turned too bitter for outdoor meetings. The shop owner, Mrs. Delaney, knew Ben and greeted him with surprising warmth, keeping his cup filled with hot coffee without charging him. "Ben helped my son once," was all she said when Noah questioned this arrangement. "Some debts can never be repaid." Noah's curiosity about Ben grew. The man clearly had education, speaking about classic literature and world history with the easy confidence of a scholar. Yet he lived on the streets, refusing shelters and seemingly content with his homeless existence. When Noah asked direct questions about his past, Ben deflected with gentle skill, turning the conversation back to books or to Noah's own life. One Wednesday afternoon in early December, Noah arrived at the coffee shop to find Ben engaged in an intense chess match with Mr. Abernathy, the retired high school principal who frequented the cafe. "Checkmate in 3 moves," Ben said quietly as Noah slid into the booth beside him. Mr. Abernathy squinted at the board, then laughed, a surprised bark of sound. "Well, I'll be damned." "You're right." He extended his hand across the board. "Best game I've had in years." After the principal left, Noah studied Ben with renewed curiosity. "You never told me you play chess." "You never asked." Ben replied with a slight smile. "Do you play?" Noah shook his head. "I know the basic moves, but that's it." "Would you like to learn?" Ben's eyes lit with something like enthusiasm. "Really learn, I mean." And so began Noah's chess education. Ben was a patient but demanding teacher, explaining not just how the pieces moved, but the philosophy behind different strategies, the poetry of a well-executed gambit, the story told across 64 squares. "Chess teaches you to think ahead," Ben explained during one lesson, "to see not just what is, but what could be, and then to make it happen." Under Ben's tutelage, Noah improved rapidly. There was something about the game that clicked with his natural way of thinking, seeing patterns, anticipating consequences, planning several moves ahead. "You have a gift for this," Ben told him after Noah executed a particularly clever sequence. "A natural strategic mind." The praise warmed Noah from the inside out. It had been so long since anyone had noticed something he was good at, something that might matter. December slipped toward Christmas. The coffee shop put up a small tree in the corner, festooned with handmade ornaments and twinkling lights. Carols played softly over the speakers. The holiday atmosphere only heightened Noah's awareness of Ben's situation. While everyone else went home to warm houses and family celebrations, Ben would be out in the cold. "What do you do for Christmas?" Noah asked one afternoon as they reset the chess pieces. Ben's hands stilled momentarily. "I observe mostly. You could come to our place," Noah offered impulsively. "It's nothing fancy, just me and my mom. But we always make too much food," and he trailed off, suddenly self-conscious. Ben studied him with an unreadable expression. "That's very kind of you, Noah. But I wouldn't want to intrude on family time." "It wouldn't be an intrusion," Noah insisted. "My mom would like you. She's a good judge of character." A shadow passed over Ben's face. There and gone so quickly, Noah almost missed it. "I'm not sure about that," he said quietly. Before Noah could press further, the shop door burst open, bringing with it a gust of cold air and a group of rowdy teenagers, Cameron right among them. Noah tensed automatically, chess piece clutched tight in his hand. But Cameron merely nodded in his direction, a brief acknowledgement before joining his friends at a table across the room. "Your former tormentor?" Ben asked, keeping his voice low. Noah nodded. "He's been different lately. People change when we change how we interact with them," Ben observed. "You stood up to him. You showed him a different version of yourself. And now he's responding to that version, not the one he created in his mind." Noah watched Cameron laughing with his friends, trying to reconcile this ordinary teenager with the monster who had dominated his school experience for years. "I still don't like him," he admitted. "You don't have to like him," Ben replied. "But recognizing his humanity doesn't diminish yours." The wisdom in those words settled over Noah like a warm blanket. He turned back to the chessboard, moving his knight with new confidence. "Check." Ben smiled, pride evident in his eyes. "Well played." So 2 days before Christmas, disaster struck. Noah arrived at the coffee shop to find it unusually quiet, Mrs. Delaney's normally cheerful face drawn with concern. "Have you seen Ben?" she asked as Noah stamped snow from his boots. "Not since yesterday." Noah replied, a tendril of worry uncurling in his stomach. "Why? What's wrong?" Mrs. Delaney twisted her dish towel between her hands. "The police came by this morning, asking questions about him. Wouldn't say why." Cold fear replaced the worry. "Did you tell them anything?" "Only that he's a regular customer." "A good man," she bit her lip. "Noah, I'm worried. With this weather, it's supposed to drop below zero tonight." Noah left the coffee shop with his heart pounding. He checked Jefferson Park, the library, the community center. All Ben's usual haunts. No sign of him. As afternoon deepened into evening, fat snowflakes began to fall, swirling in the yellow glow of street lamps. Noah's phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Working late. Leftovers in fridge. Love you." He texted back automatically, his mind still churning with concern for Ben. Why would the police be looking for him? Had something happened? Or was it simply because he was homeless, existing in spaces where some thought he didn't belong? Almost without conscious decision, Noah found himself walking toward the homeless shelter on Maple Street. He'd never been inside before, but he knew its location from his mother's occasional donations of outgrown clothes and household items. The shelter was housed in a converted church, its stained glass windows glowing warmly against the gathering darkness. Noah hesitated at the entrance, suddenly uncertain. "Can I help you?" A woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes appeared in the doorway. "I'm looking for someone," Noah explained. "A friend. His name is Ben. At least that's what he goes by. Older man, gray beard, probably wearing a navy blue peacoat." The woman's expression softened. "Ben isn't here, dear. He rarely comes to shelters." "Do you know him?" She nodded. "Most of us who work with the homeless community know Ben. He's been on the streets for well, a long time. The police are looking for him." Noah blurted out, his worry overwhelming his discretion. "And it's going to be so cold tonight. I'm afraid something bad might happen to him." The woman, her name tag read Sister Margaret, studied Noah with unexpected intensity. "You care about him." "He's my friend," Noah said simply. "He listens to me, really listens. And he's taught me so much about everything." Sister Margaret's eyes crinkled at the corners, remarkably like Ben's did when he was pleased. "That sounds like Ben. Please." Noah continued, "If you know where he might go in weather like this." She seemed to come to a decision. "There's an abandoned building on Willow Street, the old textile factory. Some of our friends find shelter there when they don't want to come in. Ben might be there. She paused, looking at the darkening sky. But you shouldn't go there alone, especially not at night. I have to find him, Noah insisted. Before the storm gets worse. Sister Margaret disappeared inside briefly, returning with a thermos. Hot soup? She explained, pressing it into his hands. If you find him, make sure he drinks it. And Noah? She caught his gaze. Be careful. The walk to Willow Street took 20 minutes, the snow falling more heavily with each passing moment. By the time Noah reached the abandoned factory, his hair and shoulders were dusted white, his fingers numb despite his gloves. The building loomed dark and forbidding, most of its windows broken or boarded up. Noah hesitated at the chain-link fence surrounding the property, his determination wavering. Then he thought of Ben, alone in this weather, possibly hiding from police for reasons Noah couldn't understand. He found a gap in the fence where others had clearly slipped through before him. The factory yard was eerily silent, snow muffling his footsteps as he approached the main entrance. The door hung partially off its hinges, opening into darkness. Ben? Noah called, his voice swallowed by the cavernous space beyond. It's Noah. Are you in here? No response. Noah pulled out his phone, activating its flashlight. The beam illuminated peeling paint, discarded machinery, the detritus of urban decay. He moved cautiously through what must have once been the main production floor, alert for any sign of life. A sound so faint he almost missed it drew him toward a staircase at the far end of the room. Noah climbed slowly, the steps creaking ominously beneath his weight. The second floor was divided into what had once been offices. In the furthest room, a faint orange glow flickered against the wall. Noah approached cautiously. Ben! The figure huddled beside a small fire in a metal trash can looked up sharply. Ben's face, illuminated by the dancing flames, registered first shock, then dismay. Noah? What on earth are you doing here? Relief made Noah's knees weak. He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping down beside the older man. I've been looking everywhere for you. Mrs. Delaney said the police came asking questions, and with the storm coming, you shouldn't be here. Ben interrupted, his voice unusually harsh. This is no place for you. I brought soup, Noah said, holding out the thermos as if it explained everything. Sister Margaret gave it to me. Ben's expression softened slightly. Margaret, he murmured, always looking after strays. Why are you hiding? Noah asked directly. What do the police want with you? Ben sighed, suddenly looking every year of his age and then some. It's complicated, Noah. I'm smart. I can handle complicated. A ghost of a smile touched Ben's lips. Yes, you are. He accepted the thermos, unscrewing the cap. Steam rose between them, carrying the rich aroma of vegetable soup. Thank you for this. Noah waited as Ben drank deeply, color gradually returning to his pale cheeks. Outside, the wind howled around the building's skeleton, finding every gap and crevice to whistle through. You should go home, Ben said, finally recapping the thermos. Your mother will be worried. She's working late. Noah settled more firmly beside Ben, making it clear he wasn't leaving. I'm not going anywhere until I know you're safe. Ben studied him for a long moment, firelight reflecting in his eyes. You're a remarkable young man, Noah Parker. I'm really not, Noah demurred. I'm just... me. And that's more than enough. Ben poked at the small fire with a piece of metal, sending sparks dancing upward. The police aren't after me for anything bad, if that's what you're worried about. I haven't broken any laws. Then why hide? Ben was silent for so long that Noah thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, as if coming from somewhere far away. Sometimes we run away from things that aren't chasing us at all, he said. Sometimes we're running from ourselves. Noah frowned, trying to decipher this cryptic response. I don't understand. No, Ben agreed softly. You don't? And that's been a gift, to be seen as just Ben, not as who I was before. Who were you before? Noah asked, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. Ben looked at him directly, the firelight casting his face in sharp relief. Someone who failed the people who mattered most to him. The raw pain in those words silenced Noah's further questions. They sat together as the fire burned low, listening to the storm rage outside. Noah texted his mother that he was staying at a friend's house, hating the deception but seeing no alternative. As the night deepened, Ben insisted Noah take the only blanket, a threadbare thing that smelled of smoke and time. Noah protested, but exhaustion eventually won out. He drifted to sleep with the sound of the wind in his ears and Ben's steady presence beside him. He woke to sunlight filtering through broken windows and the sound of voices, authoritative, official-sounding voices coming from below. Ben was already awake, sitting perfectly still, listening. His face in the cold morning light looked resigned, almost peaceful. "Police," he said quietly, noting Noah's questioning look. "They've been searching these abandoned buildings systematically." It was only a matter of time. Fear spiked through Noah's chest. "What do we do? Is there another way out?" Ben shook his head. "No more running." He stood slowly, brushing dust from the peacoat. "Noah, I need you to do something for me." "Anything," Noah promised immediately. "Remember me as I was with you." Ben's eyes held his, intense and pleading. "Not as whoever they might tell you I am." Before Noah could respond, footsteps sounded on the stairs. 2 police officers appeared in the doorway, hands moving instinctively to their weapons before relaxing as they assessed the scene. An old man and a teenager, clearly not threatening. "Benjamin Garrison?" one officer asked, his gaze fixed on Ben. Ben nodded once, resignation in every line of his body. "We've been looking for you, sir." The officer continued, his tone surprisingly respectful. "Your family is very concerned." "Family?" Noah looked between Ben and the officers in confusion. "The boy has nothing to do with this," Ben said firmly. "He was just bringing food to a homeless man. Being kind." The second officer, a woman with shrewd eyes, looked at Noah. "You're Noah Parker?" Noah's confusion deepened. "How do you know my name?" "Your mother reported you missing this morning when she found your bed empty," she explained. "We've had officers out looking for you as well." Guilt washed over Noah. He hadn't considered how his mother would feel, finding him gone with only a vague text message as explanation. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "I was worried about Ben." The male officer spoke into his radio, confirming they'd found both Benjamin Garrison and Noah Parker. The response crackled with static, but the relief in the dispatcher's voice was clear. "Sir," the officer addressed Ben, "there's someone waiting to see you. Been waiting a long time from what I understand." Ben's shoulders slumped slightly. "I suppose there's no avoiding it now." As they descended the factory stairs, Noah whispered, "Ben, what's happening?" "Who's your family?" Ben's smile was tinged with sadness. "It's a long story, Noah. One I should have told you long ago." Outside, the world was transformed by the overnight snowfall. Pristine white covering every surface, softening the factory's harsh edges. 2 police cars sat idling in the yard, exhaust vapors rising in the cold air. And beside one of them stood a tall, distinguished-looking man in an expensive overcoat, his silver hair immaculately styled, his posture radiating authority despite his obvious exhaustion. When he saw Ben, the man's composed expression crumbled. "Dad," he said, the single syllable laden with years of emotion. Noah stared in disbelief as Ben, homeless Ben, who slept in abandoned buildings and wore cast-off clothes, walked toward this elegant stranger and was enveloped in a fierce embrace. "Richard," Ben murmured, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. 6 years." "The man," Richard said hoarsely. 6 years we've been searching for you." Noah stood frozen, trying to process what he was seeing. One of the officers approached him gently. "Your mother's on her way," she said. "She'll be here soon." "Who is he?" Noah asked, unable to tear his gaze away from Ben and the stranger. "Who is Ben really?" The officer looked surprised. "You don't know? That's Benjamin Garrison, founder of Garrison Technologies. One of the wealthiest men in the country, or at least he was before he disappeared 6 years ago." The world tilted beneath Noah's feet. Ben, his Ben, who fed pigeons and taught chess and lived on the streets, was a billionaire? There must be some mistake, Noah protested weakly. "No mistake," the officer replied. "His son Richard has been searching for him ever since he walked away from his company and his fortune. Left it all behind after his wife died." Noah's mind raced, trying to reconcile everything he knew about Ben with this new information. The intelligence, the education, the dignity that no amount of poverty had diminished. Suddenly, it all made a different kind of sense. A car pulled up, and Noah's mother burst out, her face tight with worry. She ran to him, pulling him into a desperate embrace. "Noah! Oh my God, I was so worried. When I got home and you weren't there." "I'm sorry, Mom." Noah mumbled into her shoulder. "I had to help Ben. He's my friend." Over his mother's shoulder, Noah watched as Ben and Richard spoke intently, occasionally glancing in his direction. After a moment, they approached, Ben walking with a straightness to his posture that Noah had never seen before. "Mrs. Parker," Ben said formally, "I owe you an apology for keeping your son out all night. It was irresponsible of me." Noah's mother turned, still keeping one arm wrapped protectively around Noah. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in Ben's appearance. still disheveled, but somehow transformed by the context of his son standing beside him. "You're Ben?" she asked. "Noah's friend?" "I am," Ben confirmed. "Though it seems I haven't been entirely honest about who I am." Richard stepped forward, extending his hand. "Richard Garrison, miss." "Kunna, Parker. And this is my father, Benjamin Garrison. We're both extremely grateful to your son." "Grateful?" she echoed, shaking his hand automatically. "Noah found my father when no one else could," Richard explained. "He saw him, really saw him, when the rest of the world had stopped looking." Noah's mother glanced between them, confusion evident on her face. "I don't understand. The police said something about a missing billionaire?" Ben winced slightly at the word. "Former billionaire," he corrected. "I left that life behind some time ago. Dad had a breakdown after my mother died," Richard explained gently. "He disappeared. We've had private investigators searching for years, but he didn't want to be found. Until Noah," Ben added, his gaze finding Noah's. "He reminded me that connections matter, that people matter." Noah struggled to find his voice. "You let me think you were homeless." "I was homeless," Ben replied simply. "By choice, perhaps, but homeless nonetheless." "But why?" Noah's voice cracked with confusion and hurt. "Why would you choose that when you had everything?" Ben's eyes filled with a sorrow so profound it silenced Noah's questions. "After Marie, my wife, died, nothing mattered anymore. The money, the company, the status, it all seemed so meaningless without her. I couldn't bear the emptiness of that life, the hollowness of it all." He paused, his gaze distant. "So I walked away. I wanted to find what was real again." "And did you?" Noah's mother asked softly. Ben looked at Noah, his expression warming. "I found a young man who shared his lunch with a stranger, who gave away his father's coat without hesitation, who saw value in an old man that had nothing to offer but conversation." His voice roughened. "Yes, Mrs. Parker. I found what was real." Richard cleared his throat, emotion evident in his eyes. "We should get you home, Dad. Get you checked out by a doctor." Ben nodded, suddenly looking tired. "Yes, I suppose that's best." He turned to Noah. "I owe you an explanation, a proper one, and an apology." "You don't owe me anything," Noah said, finding his voice at last. "You're my friend. That doesn't change because of who you used to be." Something in Ben's face lightened at those words. "Thank you for that." He reached into the pocket of the pea coat, Noah's father's coat, and pulled out a small object. "Here, I want you to have this." He pressed it into Noah's palm. A chess piece, the White King, carved from what looked like ivory, yellowed with age. "It was my father's," Ben explained. "He taught me to play on a board he made himself." A slight smile touched his lips. "You're a far better student than I ever was." Noah's fingers closed around the piece, feeling its weight, its history. "I can't take this." "Please," Ben insisted. "To remember our games," as if Noah could ever forget. The officers were growing impatient, anxious to conclude what had apparently been a long-running missing persons case. Richard guided his father toward one of the waiting cars, but Ben paused, turning back. "Noah," he called. "Our game yesterday, you were right. It would have been checkmate in 5 moves, not 3. Despite everything, Noah felt a smile tug at his lips. "I know." Ben's answering smile held pride, affection, and a hint of mischief. "Of course you did." As the police cars pulled away, Noah stood with his mother in the snow-covered factory yard, the chess piece clutched tightly in his hand. "Mom," he said quietly, "I think I'm ready to go home now." 3 weeks later, Noah sat in the dean's office at Westlake Academy, the most prestigious private school in the city. Across the desk, Dean Harrington reviewed a file with pursed lips and raised eyebrows. "Your test scores are certainly impressive, Mr. Parker," she said, looking up at Noah over her reading glasses. "And your chess ranking is quite remarkable for someone who's only been playing competitively for such a short time." Noah shifted uncomfortably in the leather chair, acutely aware of his second-hand clothes and public school background. "Thank you. However," the dean continued, "mid-year transfers are extremely unusual at Westlake. We simply don't have the scholarship funds available at this point in the academic year." Noah nodded, disappointment settling like a stone in his stomach. He'd known this was a long shot, the interview arranged through connections Noah didn't fully understand. The opportunity seemingly materialized out of thin air after Ben had re-entered his former life. "I understand," he said, rising to leave. "Thank you for your time." The dean's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at Noah with renewed interest. "It seems the headmaster would like to speak with you before you go. If you'll wait here a moment," She left Noah alone in the oak-paneled office with its views of the academy's snow-covered campus. He wandered to the window, watching students in identical uniforms crossing between buildings, their lives so different from his own. The door opened behind him. Noah turned, expecting the dean, but found himself face to face with Benjamin Garrison. Clean-shaven, expensively dressed, yet unmistakably Ben. "Hello, Noah," he said, his voice the same as always despite his transformed appearance. "But, Ben." Noah couldn't hide his surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I serve on the board of trustees," Ben explained, settling into the chair behind the dean's desk with comfortable familiarity. "Have for years, though I've been on sabbatical recently." Noah returned to his seat, studying the man across from him. Ben looked healthier, his face filled out, the haunted look in his eyes somewhat diminished. But beneath the tailored suit and carefully groomed exterior, Noah could still see his friend, the homeless man who had shared wisdom and chess strategies on a park bench. "You arranged this interview?" Noah realized aloud. Ben nodded. "I did, but the test scores, the chess abilities, those are all yours." Dean Harrington said there aren't any scholarships available, Noah said, trying to keep disappointment from his voice. Ben smiled slightly. "Well, that's not entirely accurate. The Benjamin Garrison Scholarship for Exceptional Character was just established this morning. Fully funded in perpetuity." His eyes twinkled. "And it seems the first recipient has already been selected." Noah stared at him, understanding dawning slowly. "You created a scholarship. For me?" "For you," Ben confirmed. "And for others like you in the future. Young people with both intelligence and extraordinary character." "I can't accept that," Noah protested. "It's too much." "It's nothing compared to what you gave me," Ben replied, suddenly serious. "Noah, when you defended me, a homeless man with apparently nothing to offer, you restored my faith in humanity, in connection, in the possibility that life could still hold meaning." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "You saved me in ways you can't possibly understand." Noah swallowed hard against the emotion rising in his throat. "I just treated you like a person." "Exactly," Ben said softly. In a world where most people had stopped seeing me at all, they sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared experience between them. "How are you doing?" Noah asked finally. "Being back in your old life?" Ben considered the question carefully. "It's an adjustment. Richard wants me to return to the company in some capacity, but I'm not sure that's the right path." His expression softened. "I've been considering other options. Perhaps teaching. You'd be good at that," Noah said immediately, thinking of their chess lessons, the patient way Ben had explained complex strategies. "I think so too," Ben agreed. "I've had an excellent student to practice on." The door opened and Dean Harrington returned, her manner noticeably more deferential in Ben's presence. "Mr. Garrison, the headmaster is ready for you both." Ben rose, gesturing for Noah to accompany him. "Shall we?" As they walked through Westlake Academy's hallowed halls, Noah couldn't help but marvel at the strange journey that had brought him here. From bullied public school student to scholarship recipient at an elite private academy. All because he'd chosen to see the humanity in a man others had overlooked. "Ben," he said quietly as they paused outside the headmaster's office. "Thank you, not just for this, but for everything." Ben placed a hand on Noah's shoulder, his expression warm with pride and affection. "The world sees what it expects to see, Noah. But you have the rare gift of seeing what's actually there." He squeezed gently. "Don't ever lose that." Noah nodded, feeling the weight of the chess piece in his pocket. The White King, a reminder of unexpected connections and the transformative power of being truly seen. "I won't," he promised. And as Ben opened the door to yet another new beginning, Noah knew with absolute certainty that some promises were meant to be kept forever.